Hello everyone. So far we have been playing so many games, but I thought why not try writing a game, designing a game. Our main purpose is to learn JavaScript. We are not going to use any game engine. We may get inspirations in future from game engines, but you can consider this series as some JavaScript tutorials tailored for designing games. Here I start by creating a HTML file. These are all boilerplates. These are not important. What is important is that inside the body of the HTML. I assume you already have some ideas of what HTML and CSS is. Let me grab the URL of the file. Okay. This is my file. Whatever I write here and I save, I refresh here. On the right side, I see it. In HTML, we have different tags. For instance, one of the famous tags are the button. Another famous tag could be h1, the heading tags. We have h1 through h6, and we see them. We are not going to focus on HTML for most part, so I would say this would be enough. But apart from that, we have some CSS stuff to be working as well. For instance, here for the text, I say the color should be red, and I see the color is red. I'd say the background color should be aqua, whatever that means. And it is changed. I can position stuff, for instance, for the h1, I would say the position is relative and it should be like 40 pixels from the left. And you already see, and I can save and refresh and see the changes. And yeah, that would suffice also for now. That's all the CSS we can get. But the magic, the most part we are going to work mostly is in the JavaScript. The famous starter for every programming language is the hello world statement. Here I write a console log hello world. I can press F12 on my machine, on my laptop. Either if you are using Chrome or Firefox, it would work. And it pops up these developer tools and you can go to the console. In the console, if I refresh, I see my hello world here. So whatever I do is here. I can define a variable, let a equals 10, and then console log a. I can see the 10 is also logged here. I can say a equals a plus 6, whatever is in a, add to a. It becomes 16. Because the main point of these series is not JavaScript tutorials, it's designing games with JavaScript. I said that would also suffice for now. If you are interested in learning more, you can go to w3schools.com for learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It has all sorts of information to get you started. But yeah, let's go talk about games. For games, let's imagine we have a player here. Imagine this div is our player, div is another HTML tag. I would say it should be 100 pixel by 100 pixel, and let's give it a background color so it's obvious. Okay, this is our player, right? And I want this player to be moving while we are pressing up, down, left, and right arrows. So I would say position relative, whatever you don't understand, whatever syntax or whatever keyword like the position and what does position relative mean, feel free to go to W3 Schools and learn it from there. They are not the main purpose of this tutorial. So if I say top is 100 pixel, as we learned previously, it would move by 100 pixel from the top. If I say 10 pixel, it would move 10 pixel from the top. The same is with left. If I say left is 10 pixel, it moves 10 pixel to the right. Left 10 pixels means the space from left should be 10 pixel. It also could be negative. If I say left is minus 40 pixel, it goes 40 pixel to the left. The space from left becomes minus 40 pixel. That's how you could reason about it. But that's not fun. We don't want to be coding. We want to be able to control the player with the coding. As you see, I have GitHub Copilot installed. Those slight gray text, you see, I can press tab and it auto completes for me. Those are GitHub Copilot. If you don't have them, don't worry, that's not really a big deal. Okay, now I want this. There is another tool in the developer tools called Inspector. I can choose the selector here, go on my player, and I already have it. I can see whatever I wrote here, and the browser highlights it for me. It's called DOM, Document Object Model. It's a big name, but in simple terms is that whatever I write here as HTML, the browser translates it to objects on the page for me. That's as simple as it gets. But if I select the div, and there is a JavaScript command called document query selector, and I say div. What does it mean is that go to the DOM document. Here is this is the DOM. I would say go to the document. Query selector simply means find something for me. Find a div for me. I'm looking for this div. So if I say document query selector div, it gives me the div. As you see, it highlights it. So I can say this div.style, it gives me all the styles I defined here. You see width 100, height 100, background color red, and position relative. Whatever I defined here, I can see on the DOM here for the div. And I can change them. If I say style top equals 10 pixel, you see my element moved. So I'm moving the element with JavaScript rather than moving the element with HTML. I can do this. I can do whatever I want. But again, that's not that one. I don't want to be coding to move the element. That could be an idea of the game, but that's not the point here. Rather, I want to be able to move the element with when I press the arrow keys. So here I would do the same thing. We had document.query selector div, but I would assign it to a variable. I would call it player. Let's call it player. So if I console log player here, you see, if I click here, beside the console, it writes which line of which file is doing this console log. If I click here, it shows that this line, the console log player, is logging this line here. So that means this is our console log. So we have our DOM, the same thing that we were playing with, like this, the same thing, document query selector div. We have stored it inside a variable. The const is a way to define a variable. You can also do let player. I would prefer const whenever I could. So I have it here. So I could do player that style the top equals 100 pixel. If I refresh, it's 100 pixel by top. I change it to 200, save it, and refresh, it's 200. It's the same idea, that it's the same thing that we are applying so far. But how should I start listening is the correct word here, listening to the key presses that user presses on the browser? Again, we go to the same document we had. Document is something that the browser gives to us. You can think of as a way to interact with whatever the browser has done for us, has rendered the objects the browser rendered on the page. I would say document.add event listener. Add event listener is kind of self-explanatory. It means I want to listen to any event that happened. Events could be different events. We can have click events whenever something is clicked. We can have copy or cut events whenever something is copied or cut. We can have double click, drag, drop events. Focus event, input event, meaning when somebody typed something in the input. Key down, key press, key up. Difference between key down and key up is kind of obvious. Key press is a combination of key down and key up. We can have mouse events whenever the mouse is moved and whatever. There is a long list. You can read all about them. But here I am interested in key down. Actually, I'm interested in key press. No, key down is better. Whenever user started pressing a button. And I should define a function. I didn't talk about functions that much. So I could say console log 1, and I get my one console log here. I could say console log 2, and I get my console log here. Okay. but I want a way of doing this console log 1 and console log 2 all together. So I would say function, I would call it sum fn. It's like how you define variable. I should say let some variable equals something. Here I would say function, sum function. It's the name of the function, and this is a keyword like for defining a function. Functions follow with parentheses and then some brackets. If I whatever statement I put in the function, console log 1, console log 2 goes into the definition of that function. So I press here. Now I have some function here. If I write the name of the function, put a parenthesis after parts, you see my 1 and my 2 are logged after each other. It's exactly as the same instructions I gave inside the function. Let's make the function a little bit more complicated. Inside the function, I would write a variable called a. I assign it to 2. I assign 2 to it. So, and then I console log a. So far, if I call some function, I should get 2. Okay, that's good. But after logging it, I would say a equals a plus 5. Whatever a is, add 5 to it. And then I would console log a again. So if I call the function again, it first logs 2 at this point. Then it adds 5 to the a, so a becomes 7, and then logs a at this point. I get 2 logs. So that's the whole idea of functions. Here, for add event listeners, I say, hey document, please listen for key down for me, and whenever a key down happens, run this function. Let's start with the console log to see if our logging works. I would say key pressed, so I refresh the page. Now I start typing on my keyboard. You see this small number. Let me zoom in. This small number beside key pressed. It shows how many times the key was pressed, how many times this message is logged. So as you see, that thing goes high. Whatever I type, whenever I type, this function gets called. That's as simple as that. But how can I know what key is pressed? So let's get back to our function. We had a function called sum function, and whenever we called it, it defined a variable within itself called a, assigns 2 to it, then logs it, and then adds 5 to it, becomes 7, and logs it again. But I want to be able to control how much it adds to the a. So I would call this variable something else. I would call it n. It's the name of another variable. But where is n? Here in parentheses, you can define function inputs. I would say this function receives some input called n. And that's it. So if I call my function again, we will get to this nan later. Forget about that. But if I call my function and pass whatever input, whatever number to it, if I pass in 10, you see, it first logs 2. It assigns 2, then logs 2 here. And then my input, which was 10, it adds 10 to the a and logs the a again. So it becomes 12. This is the concept of adding, and I can call it again with another input. Let's call with 51. So it logs 2 and 53. According to my input, this function behavior changes. Having inputs for functions is very flexible, and it's exactly what helps us here. So far what do we have? Whenever I press a key, I get this log, console log key pressed. What does it mean? How does it work? We ask the document that whenever there is a key down, call this function. But document is smart enough to tell us what key is pressed. Actually, it gives us an event. That's why it's called add event listener. So key down is an event, and whenever it happens, it gives the whole event to us. Let's log the event to see what it holds. So I refresh the page. Now, whenever I press the press any key on the keyboard, a different thing is called. A different event is logged. If I expanded the object, it is a very complicated object. We don't really need all of it. What is interesting to us is that every event has a key on it. Here, I first pressed H, then D, then I, then D, then a space. Here, I pressed the space. And then I started pressing arrow up and arrow left. Now I press arrow left. You see, I press arrow up, I press arrow down, I press arrow right, and I press space. So, and this is an object. Object means a collection of some variables. You can think of as collection of some variables. It's not an accurate definition, but it does the job for now. So it says this is the whole event. This is a key down event. And let's take a look at this example. And there are some stuff in it. For instance, it says alt key false. User was not holding the alt key when they press this key, and control key is also false. User did not also hold the control key. But what is interesting for us is the key property here. These are called properties rather than variables. So I would log, instead of event, I would log event.key, because the key property is what I'm interested in. Let's refresh the page. Now, whatever I type, I get exactly the name of the key that I pressed. This is really interesting. So, and we also already knew how to change the relative position of the player. So I would say whenever any key was pressed, I want to change player style top to 400 pixel, right? I refresh the page. Right now, it doesn't matter whatever key we press, because this function gets called. I press, let's say, H, and my player jumps then. I press U again, Y, whatever button I press. This function is still getting executed, but because 400 pixel is exactly the position this player is at right now, we won't see the change. But whenever we refresh, and we press another key again, we see the jump again. But I want to change the behavior, where the player jumps based on the key. There is another part in JavaScript, if. I would say if event that key equals arrow. Let's see how it's right. Arrow right. Yes. I would say if it's arrow right, I want the player style left to go to 400 pixel. And let's play arrow up. Here is the arrow up. But if the event key equals arrow up, I want the player style top to be 0 pixel. That they don't make sense, but we are still trying to understand how the if statement works. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's like normal English. So I refresh the page. I press the space key, nothing happens. Whatever key I press, nothing happens. But as soon as I press the arrow right, I press the arrow right, look. This code got executed, not this code. And now I press whatever key again, nothing changes. But as soon as I press the arrow up, this code get executed. Player style top equals 0. So the player goes attaches itself to the ceiling of the game window. That's kind of the idea of what we want to do. But these numbers don't actually make any sense. We want the player, whenever we press any arrow, we want the player to move relatively to where they are right now. So, and how do we do it? The way we do it is whenever a key is pressed, we get the current position of the player, and then we add to it. Let's do it. I can't say it in words. We should do it in code. So I'd say player top equals player style top, and let's start at 0 0, top 0 pixel, left 0 pixel. So whenever the game, let's remove this code, and whenever the game starts, the player is at 0 0. Player top is player.style.top, and player left is player.style.left. So now whenever a key is pressed, I say player colon, I put a comma, I can pass different arguments, different inputs to console log. So it first console logs this string, then logs the player top, then logs the player left. So now whenever I press a button, it shows me the player colon, this is this one, player colon, then it shows me the top value of the player, then it shows me the left value of the style of the player. They are 0 pixel right now because the HTML starts with 0 pixel. But as soon as I press right key, the player should jump at 400 pixel. I press the right key now. It went at 400 pixel. But this console log was executed before this code was executed. So we still got the information of the previous player. So, but right now, if I press any other key, I press space now, it shows me the current information of where the player is right now. The same is also true about the top. If I press any key, I see player 0 0. I press arrow up, the player jumps a bit down, and if I press any other key right now, it shows me the player is at 10 pixel. The player top is 10 pixel. I press arrow right, it jumps here, and I press any other key right now, it shows me the player is at 10 pixel and 400 pixel. But if you notice, this 10 pixel and 400 pixel are not numbers. They are 10 is a number, but 10 px is nothing. It doesn't make any sense for JavaScript. You see, it even throws me an error. To extract a number out of a string, this is called a string. I want to get the number out of it. There is a function in JavaScript. We don't need to define this function. This function already exists in JavaScript wherever you write. I get the number out of JavaScript. Now this is really a number. I can use this parse int here to parse the numeric value of the style top of the player. I can also do parse int on the player left. So now if I refresh the page, I press space, I see numbers here instead of strings that start with a number and have px as a suffix. I press arrow top and arrow right, and I press any other key, and I see numbers here. This is really cool. We are already getting an idea what we want to do. So let's implement the code. If event key equals arrow right, whenever user presses right, I want to go 1 pixel to the right. What does it mean? I want to get the current new left position. Let's call it target left position, where I want the left value, the actually style.left value of the player be. The target left position should be player left, which is this number, I assume. Okay, I removed the console log, which is one of these numbers. I would say it's player current left plus 1. And let's console log it, target left position. We don't do the arrow up right now. So right now the player left position is at 0. It means it has 0 pixels space from the left. And if I press arrow right, it should jump to 1 pixel. This was wrong. It should be like this. If I refresh the page and I press right, it shows me 1. What happens here? Let's do something. Current player left. Here we do target player left. If I press right, it says current player left here. It says it's at 0 pixel because in our HTML we are starting with 0 pixel whenever we refresh the page. And it says target player left equals 1. The target player left is the value of the current player left. Let's actually change the name of these variables to be more accurate. Current player top and current player left. Yeah, we will look. It says the target left position where we want the player be after they pressed the arrow right to be its current position plus 1 to the right. It means to be one more space further, one more pixel further from the left. So now that we have the target left position, and I can't simply say, let's get the document query selector div. I can't simply say I want the style left to be, let's say 2. It doesn't work. It doesn't change. If I do 200, it also doesn't change. It has to be a string that has px afterwards it. Or if I say 2 pixel, then I say 3 pixel, it jumps to the right. And here also, we should do the same thing. I would say player.style.left equals the target left position plus px. In JavaScript, if I do a number, I get a number. If I do a string, I get a string. If I do a number plus a string, JavaScript automatically creates a string that contains the number at the beginning and the string at the end. So here we are doing the same thing. The target left position gives us a number where the desired position, the desired pixel where the player should be. And then we concatenate it with the string pixel. And we assign the result to the player style left. So let's refresh the page. I'm pressing the right button. As you see, the element, the player is moving to the right. The same should be true, should work for the arrow up. I copy the code, I paste it here. Now we are talking about target top position equals current player top plus 1, and style top should be target top position. I changed something. Current player top plus 1, and the player.style.top should be target top position plus pixel. Let's see how it works. I press right, it goes to the right. I press up, it goes down. It is incorrect. I forgot that it should be -1 because we want the player to go up, so its space from the top should decrease 1 pixel by 1 pixel. So we are decreasing here. I save the code, I refresh, I press right, it goes to right. I press top, it goes up. And I can copy the same code statement two more times. If user is pressing right, let's get rid of this. If user presses bottom, we want the target top position to be current player top plus 1. It's the behavior that we wanted in the first place. And for the right, let's copy this block because it's easier to change. If user presses right, if user presses left, we want the current player left to go 1 pixel to the left. I save, refresh. I'm holding right now. I'm holding down right now. Okay, the down doesn't work. Arrow bottom. I'm not sure if the bottom, I guess bottom is the wrong word. I should use arrow down. How can I make sure it's actually easy to make sure? I would put the console log again to console log the event key. I refresh. Yeah, it's arrow down. I press down on the keyboard and I see what is happening on the console. So it should be arrow down. Save, refresh. I'm holding right. I'm holding down. I'm holding left, and I'm holding up. It works perfectly every time. That's kind of enough for today's video. Just let's review what we did. These are all boilerplate. Actually, I can get rid of them. This is not important. If I save and refresh, I can get the same thing. This is actually important, but not for what we are doing right now. This line is also not important. I can get rid of it, and everything it still works. You get a warning from Firefox that says, hey, you got removed. You removed this thing, but we can ignore the warning for now. Let it be. This is actually also not important for the sake of this video. Whatever I'm removing is actually pretty important whenever we go into advanced HTML, but they are not important right now. Even the body is not important. I can get rid of the body as well. But the rest is actually what we need. I don't need this console log. We were putting the console log, sorry. We were putting the console log for testing the code to see what's going on. Let's review what we did in these 38 lines of code. We got a player moving. So we have a div. A div is just an HTML tag. It could be anything. I would change it to button and it still works. No, it doesn't work because button, here we are query select, we are searching for a div. Now let's search for the button. I save, refresh. It still works again. I went for div because div, I don't know, it's just an element. You can use whatever element you want. We set some initial styles for it. Width should be 100 pixel, height should be 100 pixel. Let's change it to 10 pixel to see how small our player looks like. Width and height are 10 pixel right now. Let's change the width to 100 pixel, but keep the height at 10 pixel. You see it's a 100 pixel by 10 pixel rectangle. So this is the width and height. We set a background color. Background color is just, it was obvious. I could do it blue and you see it, whatever we do. We can also do hex, we can do RGB or hex code. It means I want to specify how many RGB, red, green, blue to be mixed. If I say I want 100 units of red, 0 green and 0 blue, I get a reddish color. If I say I want to mix a 100 pixel of green, sorry, we get this. I also mix 100 pixel of blue. Same amount of red, green, blue gives us gray. So let's keep with that reddish color for now. This position relative, it's hard to explain right now, but let's get rid of this and see what problem we have. I save, I refresh the page. Now I'm pressing right, down, top, and left arrows. Nothing happens. This position relative is necessary for the top, left, and wherever here we change the left and the top of the player to work. So let's consider this as necessary right now. You can do relative, you can do fixed as well. It would also get the job done. Here it is fixed, and we can change it, we can move the player, everything works. I would change it back to relative for the sake of this video. And we start with initial values of 0 and 0 for the top and left of the player. So it starts here. If I say let's start at 500 pixel by 50 pixel, just some random numbers, it starts at here. 500 is too much. Let's go to 200. It starts at here, but everything else works the same because every time we are calculating the current player left and our current player top, and we are moving relative to its current position. Let's change these back also to 0. And yeah, here we are just defining a div with some initial values to work with. And then we have a script. This is a tag. You see this div is also a tag. If I change it to button, this is also a tag. The script is a special tag. It's a tag that you write JavaScript in. And remember when I told you could use any tag you want here? That was a lie. For instance, you can't use a script tag for this. But anyway, I'm not sure. Let's try it out. If I say it's a script, yeah, we don't see the element anymore. So I change it back to div, save, refresh. Here, everything we see here is JavaScript, but everything other than these lines are HTML. These are also called CSS, but you can consider it as part of the HTML. Here, first we are searching for our div. We ask the document query. Query means kind of search. Query for the div, find the div for us, and document searches the whole HTML and finds, hey, this is your div. Gives it back to us, and we are storing it into a variable called player. And then we ask, hey document, I want to listen to an event, to a key down event. And whenever there is an event, a key down event, call this function for us. This whole function that I just collapsed. This whole function. So whenever there is a key down, even if I press space, I don't know, some random keys on my keyboard, this function is still getting called, but we are not doing anything because we have some specific if statements that only does something when there is an arrow right, arrow left, arrow up, or arrow down is pressed. So whatever key I press, it doesn't do anything, but if I hold right, if I hold down, it starts moving the player. To be able to calculate where the player should be, we get the current top of the element, the player. The element means HTML element. That's why I mix the player and element sometimes. So this is an element, but we are naming it player because we are trying to create a game here. So player makes more sense. Yeah, whenever our function is called, first we get the top value of it and then the left value of it. We use parse int to extract the number from the string that that HTML gives us. Let's see it again in the JavaScript console. Here we have this, we have style.top. It gives us a string. And if I pass this whole thing to a parse int, it gives me the number from that string. It parses it for us. And parse int, the int in parse int is short for integer. It means extract an integer, parse an integer value from this for me. We store these the top and left of the player and in variables named accordingly. Then we check on the event that the event listener, the document event listener, is giving to us. We compare the event.key to see which key is pressed. If the key that was pressed was either arrow right, arrow left, arrow up, or arrow down, we actually want to do something. If it was arrow right or arrow left, we get the current player left. And in case of arrow right, we add one to the current player left. And in case of arrow left, we subtract one from the current player left. So if I press right, it goes to the right because we are adding one. Actually, this is not obvious. Let's, instead of adding one, let's add 10. So the moving of the player is more obvious. So when I press right, the player goes right by 10 pixels. And when I press left, it goes left by 10 pixels. Yeah, we calculated, we added 10 to it, and in the case of left, we subtract 10 from it. And then we assign the target, we add the suffix of px, and we assign it to the player style left. The player was the thing that the document query selector got for us. And yeah, it gives us the illusion of the player, that the player is moving, but it's simply that every time we are updating the element top and left position. And if it is arrow up and arrow down, we look at the current player top. In case of arrow up, we subtract 10. In case of arrow down, we add 10. And again, we do the same thing. And yeah, that's it. That's it for today's video. In the next video, we will try to do something cooler. I have no idea what we are going to do.